Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our series of shirim on the Mittler Rebbe of Chabad's Shaar HaYichud with the commentary of Rav Hillel Meparich. And we're moving further into the Mittler Rebbe's description to us of the preliminary levels prior to revelation. And we're speaking on the Dargin prior to the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light, prior to the Tzimtzum. And we're speaking about the way in which the infinite light slowly but surely iterates itself and reveals itself within finitude, because the entirety of the Seder HaShtalshelus is coming to show us how there can be change when in truth there is no change. And the fact that in truth there is no change doesn't stop the actual change, and the actual change doesn't change the fact that there is no change. And the ability to hold both of these elements of this inherent and fundamental paradox together is going to be answered up by way of the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum is the revelation that teaches us that all revelation is a slow and steady unfolding of possibility into potential, into actualization. And therefore, any changes that incur as a result of the revelation of a potential that was negated in its source is not something new that's taking shape. It's not something that was not present within the infinite, so to speak. It's just that when it existed within the infinite, it existed by way of such fundamental and absolute bittul to the degree that it's almost impossible to say that it exists in any way other than pure possibility. That's the darga of Yachid, pure possibility prior to any differentiation whatsoever, but nevertheless, it's a pure possibility that contains all possibilities within it. Then comes the level of Echad, which is the place where all possibility begins to emerge in actuality. So now we have the options of how to reveal something, and it's moving out of that state of pure possibility into a state of revealed possibility. And then it emerges into the level of Kadmon, which is when everything stands at the ready to be revealed in a particularized way, and it is now just waiting for its Tzimtzum to be an explicit expression. So these three levels were explained in the previous chapter in Parak Yud to relate to the inner experience of the self. First, the Mittler Rebbe explains how it's true for HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, that prior to the Tzimtzum, what Hashem revealed was his infinite light, the essence of his infinite light. And we made a very fundamental distinction between the essence of infinite light and the essence of God, so to speak, that the essence of infinite light is the highest level that we're capable of discussing, but nevertheless, we're fundamentally aware that we're not talking about the essence of God, so to say. We're never talking about the essence of God, in spite of the fact that it's always revealed in every way of revelation. Nevertheless, it is not something that is subject to discussion, contemplation, or grasp. Therefore, the highest level is already a level of revelation, which by definition means that it's no longer the original source, but it's the secret of a source that reveals itself to be secondary to the ungraspable source, but it maintains a certain semblance of that original source, which is the secret of Or Ein Sof, called the Tzimtzum. So first and foremost, there was the Yachid in that Or Ein Sof. It was the secret of distinction prior to any distinction, the possibility of distinction prior to even the distinction of possibility. And then comes the distinction of possibility. So there's the possibility of distinction, the distinction of possibility, and then we eventually emerge into that process where things are now fully ready to be revealed in a particular way. The Mittler Rebbe is coming upon these 3 and 4 levels to show how there is a bridge that allows the infinite to collapse into the finite without that infinite losing its shame of infinitude, but nevertheless ensuring that the finite maintains its finite expression and doesn't revert back to the infinitude which is being revealed through it. So now the Mittler Rebbe is going to come and give us more of an insight of these 3 levels, not within the Mebasari Echaza Elokim perspective, where first and foremost I have this general propensity towards possibility of self, just like the potential of movement within the self prior to the application of movement. At that place, there's no definition of how I want to reveal myself. There's just the koyach hahiyuli, the general hylic matter of a desire to bestow goodness, but it is not revealed how or in which way that goodness is going to be revealed. It's still caught up in utter and impossible possibility. Then there is going to be the emergence of the possibility of engaging in that desire of chesed, and I get to choose how I would like to express my chesed through the Gimel Rishonim or the Zayin Tachtonim. Each and every expression has its own 10 spheros to it. And then that's still prior to revelation. That's the Shiur Ba'atzmo. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu estimates, so to speak, within himself how he would like to reveal himself. It's a step beyond pure possibility, and it's the emergence of possibility. And then there's the choosing of the particularized way in which I would like to express myself with that real engraving and the galif gelufe, which ensures that this is how I'm going to reveal myself. And then there's going to be the revelation, which is the ostalid, which we haven't seen yet. But what the Mittler Rebbe teaches us is that when it comes to grasping that infinite possibility prior to possibility being possible on that level of Yachid, so we have no idea where that infinite Yecholos can go. And the only way we grab hold of what the possibilities of that Yecholos is by way of that which is revealed in reality. If something is revealed in reality, if there's a Giloy of something, then ultimately we retroactively look back and we say, oh, this revelation must be somehow, some way rooted in that interiority of the possibility of possibility at the highest level, because if not, then it wouldn't be found in existence. So this is what the Mittler Rebbe has been giving us access to. So now we're going to see these ideas transported from the mashal and the metaphor of the self and abstracted back into the territory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation, but it is also ein beis medrash b'lei chiddush. It's going to be repeating to us some of the ideas that we saw before, but every word that the Mittler Rebbe chose to give us are words that are engraved upon the heart, and they're there to create the vessels for his holiness in the right way. V'hanimshol mikol hanizkal el benefesh. The demetaphorization of everything that we've described earlier with regards to the metaphors of the self. Yuvan lamaski lamala ba'atzmas or in soif shelifnei hatzimtzum shenikra yachid v'kolol gam sham me eser svirus v'nikra eser svirus hagenuzos behe'elem ha'atzmus mamish. So when we abstract from the metaphor to the essence of what we're trying to understand, we can now come to contemplate the essence of divine light. Again, we're not talking about the essence of God, we're talking about the essence of the infinite light that existed prior to the Tzimtzum. That place is referred to as Yachid, and in that place, even though it is completely undifferentiated, even though it is pure possibility prior to the actualization of possibility, even in a specific type of way, that place contains within itself as well an element of Esther Spheros. Now, they're not separate, they're not revealed to be separate elements to the degree that we can't even say that they're unified, but nevertheless, there still exists an element of the Esther Spheros Hagenuzos Behe'elem Ba'atzmus Mamish. There exists the potential towards the Esther Spheros that are contained and concealed in fundamental concealment within the essence of the infinite light itself. This is the secret of, we know that the Arizal tells us in Shaar Membeis that there's an Indian of Malchus the Ein Sof, which seems to be the possibility of those midos existing by way of non-existence within the infinite itself. And if we see a Malchus, so we know that there's going to be a 9 spheros that precede it. Malchus is always the end of a process. And Mamela, if we're seeing the end of a process, then we have to become aware of the fact that there's an inner process as well. And that's the Esher spheros hagenuzos behe'elem ha'atzmus mamish. That everything that's going to be revealed in the future is contained by way of possibility within the inner interiority of all things. Like, for example, like we said, Kamei bechinas chafetz chesed, shekolul bechinas atzmius the or ein sof, that just as there's a malchus the Ein Sof, so too there's going to be the chafetz chesed. There's going to be the desire of kindness and the bestowal of goodness that rests within the infinite light as well. Shemachmaso v'sibaso haya haratzon hapashat l'chol ha'ishtalshelus shezehu b'davar prat k'meshakasav be'etz chaim b'hakdama. That we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu also has an infinite expression of kindness and chesed in that hiyuli form prior to any distinction whatsoever, still operating on the level of Yachid. We know that this is the motivating desire that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has behind the entirety of the Hishtalshalis of the Ilamos, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bestow goodness upon us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be mashpia chesed and tov for the world. As it's written in the Hakdama of the Arizal's Eitz Chaim, that Kisha'ala b'retzoyneh ha'pashat, when it arose with his simple and unfathomable will, v'chule. So what the Mittler Rebbe is pointing out to here is that the Ari gives us 2 sibos for the creation of the world. What we see in the first Shaar of Eitz Chaim and Shaar Igulim v'Yosher, where we talk about the Tzimtzum that we're familiar with. So we see that the purpose of the creation of the world there was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite in all matters of infinitude, and therefore he contains all possible iterations of expression, because if we were to deny any of the iterations or the possibilities of expression, we would be limiting the infinite nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But prior to the creation of the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has stipulated that it is impossible for a king to reveal his kingship by any way other than another person receiving it. So therefore, in order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kavyachol, to reveal all of the potential that rested within his infinite potential and to allow it to be actualized so that it can be grasped in the dir b'tachtainim. So there has to be something other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu so that this kochos can be miskala. That's b'derech klal begin diyish tamidon lo, so that we should come to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists, and that's the purpose of the creation of the world. But in Shaar HaKlalim, what the Mittler Rebbe seems to be referring to as the Hakdama to Eitz Chaim, we know that Rav Chaim Vital says not to learn it necessarily with the rest of the Sha'arim and Eitz Chaim. It precedes the Sha'arim and Eitz Chaim. Over there, we see a secondary reason for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation of the world, which is Chafetz Chesed, which is that Choykatov Lehetiv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bestow goodness upon creation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bestow goodness from the highest levels of goodness imaginable, so that that goodness can be revealed Lamata Me'asar Tvachim. And so it appears to be a stira. The Ramchal comes along and says in Oitzer Chaim Shalo that the ikar reason is Choykatov Lehetiv. And over here, it seems that the Mittler Rebbe is taking this element of Chesed and seeing, we see that interior to the interiority of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite light, even prior to any differentiation imaginable, all possibilities existed there, as we see from the Chafetz Chesed, who ba'atzmo imkein ala b'ratzayna lehetiv chazdo lios makor lehishtalshelis dekav v'chut. What we see is that when it arose within his fundamentally simple will to create the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create it for the sake of bestowing goodness. Ubevadai sibas aliyas haratzon hapashat ba'atzmuso hainu rak ki chafetz chesed hu ba'atzmo imkein ala b'ratzona lehetiv chazdo lios makor lemakor hahishtalshelis dekav v'chut v'chulei. And as a result of the fact that embedded within the very inner interiority of the Yichud, of Yochid, prior to any differentiation whatsoever, there was that heilig will and desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bestow goodness that rests behind the entire unfolding of the Seder HaHishtal, which is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu arose within his will to bestow goodness. And that arousal of the will that exists within the inner interiority of the infinite light is what becomes the source for the eventual expression of the Seder Hashtalshalis that begins to take shape after the Tzimtzum by way of the Kav and the Chut. So we see that prior to even the Tzimtzum, which is the intermediary point in which the infinite realms can now begin to reveal themselves in finite realms, which is the fourth level, which we have not yet discussed. Nevertheless, the first three levels of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon exist, and they continue to exist even after the fourth level of the Tzimtzum. They express themselves downwards. And so we see how the original desire for the Seder Hashtalshalis, which is eventually going to reveal itself in the Kav and the Chut, which is something that's graspable on the level of revelation, so it's rooted fundamentally in the Yachid, which is the Eser Sfiros HaGenuzos B'Ma'atzila Mamish Kavyachol, which is the secret of the infinite reservoirs of the possibility, the Yechilas, that holds all eventual unfolding possibilities together. So, for example, Kishemachmas Atzmiyut Hamida the Chafetz Chesed Haklula Bebechinas Yechida Keniska La'el Oile Beritzone La'asais Toiv V'Chesed Bedavar Prat Keniska La'el Sheba Begilui Min Ha'alamo HaHiyuli the Chafetz Chesed Lichlol Kolma Sheya'ale Beprat Beritzone Lahetiv Hakol Ba Machmasoi V'Koichoi V'Chulei. So what the Mittler Rebbe is giving us is a tremendous klal when it comes to any of the spheros, any of the Eser Spheros HaGenuzos, all of the potential possibilities that have yet to congeal into even a revealed form of possibility. They're all contained there, so that, for example, we can understand that any Chafetz Chesed down here is rooted in the fundamental and essential quality of Chafetz Chesed that is contained within the essential singularity of self that arises within the will to do goodness in this particularized way. The particularized expression of goodness is not the beginning of that desire towards goodness, but in fact, it's the culmination of a long and steady process of the Seder Hashtalshalis that comes into revelation from within the fundamental heilig concealment of that generalized form of all possibilities of Chafetz Chesed, and it expresses itself with the possibility of expressing itself so too in this particularized form, to give goodness in this particularized way. We come to see that it's all rooted in the infinite and essential light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's goodness. This is what we saw earlier, that all eventual gradations and particularity of expression are rooted somehow, some way back in the place prior to differentiation and prior to separation. Ukemoshe begiloi ratzon sheba machmas chafetz chesed ze kolul meyud, meaning to say the chokhmah, bina, das, and the midos v'chulei. Mizeh muchrach shegam bebechinas chafetz chesed hayiyuli shekolul ba'atzmus mamish kolul meyud chokhmah v'midos v'chulei. By dint of the fact that we're just claiming now that any chesed that's going to be expressed down here in a particularized way can be abstracted back to that Heilig infinite form of the possibility towards any form of imaginable chesed, but through the Seder Ishtalshalos and through the Tzimtzum, that Heilig possibility has expressed itself in this particularized form and shape. We see in the particularized form and shape in which a person engages in actual acts of kindness contains within itself 10 spheros. I have to think about, by way of Chachma, the general framework of how I'm going to do the chesed. Then I have to have a Havanas Davar Mitoch Davar to understand how can I actually bring about that chesed that I wanted to do. And then I have to have my Das, which is the application of the wisdom of wanting to do chesed and drawing it down into the lived experience. And then my chesed within myself is the desire to reach outwards to help, and the Gevura is the awareness of the limitations, and the Tiferes is going to be my alignment between the desire outwards and the restriction inwards to come to a place of a synthesis of sorts, and that's my Netzach is going to be Menatzeach on all difficulty, and the Hod is going to acknowledge the difficulties, and the Yisoid is going to bring everything closer and closer to fruition until it expresses itself in a Malchus. By dint of the fact that we see in any applied physics of Chesed, or really any quality for that matter, that there are always going to be a baseline of 10 that are inherent within each and every revelation, we can extrapolate back up to the highest source from which we emerge that there also exists the possibility of 10 over there. But we know that we can't speak of separation, so we have to come onto the secret of a Yachid that's prior to any distinction whatsoever, but it's the burgeoning possibility of possibility. And then the Echad is going to be the emergence of that possibility in the form of the 10 spheros, which give the possibility of how to shape all possibilities to actualize something. And in that place, it's Echad, it's unified together. All differentiation is unified together. And then it comes to the place of Kadmon, which is where everything is standing at the ready to be revealed. Rak shelo yitakin behem loimer gam inyan hisklalus ve'achdus acher shekalul ba'atzmus bebechinas ha'hiyuli adayin v'chulei. וכמו במידה זו לא עשו כמו מידת הגבורה או הנצח והתפארת וכי הגוונה. הכל הוא כלול בעצמוס דאור אינסוף שנקרא תהי ורילה. והוא נקרא יחיד שלמעלה מאחד הפשט וכולי. עד בחינס המלכוס בעצמוס דאור אינסוף שנקרא מלכוס דאור אינסוף. גם הוא כלול בבחינס היולי בעצמי דעצמוס דאור אינסוף שהוא בחינס אינסוף ממש. כמו שחפץ חסד בבחינס אינסוף ממש בעצמוס או לחכמסי אינסוף כך מידס הסנסוס שכלול בעצמוסו אור אינסוף הוא בבחינס אינסוף וכלול מיוד בהעלם העצמוס שהוא בחינס הרצון והתיינוג והחכמה והמידוס שהמידוס המלכוס אך עניין אנא אמלך שאלה ברצונוי ומחשבה פשוט, היינו כשבא הדבר בפרטי לבחינס ההשתלשלוס בגילוי מהעלמו ההיולי כנזכה לאל במידה חפץ חסד באדם למטה וכנזכה לאל. So let's go back to this paragraph that we just read. The Mittler Rebbe is summarizing what he wants us to understand. He's saying that we see that by dint of the fact that whenever there's an actual revelation, it contains 10 midos within itself, so too the source of that revelation, which is rooted in the most interiorities of infinitude prior to the Tzimtzum itself, so it must be that in the source itself, there's also going to be the original shape, the possibility of the shape of the 10 different spheros through which this expression is going to take shape. But like we said, it's still operating in place prior to the actual revelation of any sense of separateness of 10 separate elements that are unified. That's the level of Echad. Over here on the level of Yachid, they're all contained within unity, and they far transcend the possibility of joining them all together in an Achdus Echad. There's no Achdus here. All there is Heilig potential because there's no separation. So too with any Midah. This is not only true by the Keser of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, but it's true by the Gevura and it's true by the Netzach, that any expression of self is fundamentally going to be rooted in the origination of the possibility of all possibilities that contains all eventual iterations of possibility, so that when we see the practical applications down here, we can abstract back above. Everything was contained within the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is referred to as the ascendant Tehiru Ilah, which is prior to the Tzimtzum, which is referred to as the singularity, which is above Echad Pashut. It's the Yachid that's Koidem of Echad. And it also includes the Midah of Malchus. By every single Midah that we encounter, even the Midah of Hisnasus, even the Midah of selfhood, even the Midah of the desire towards power, all of that is reflected on the desire towards power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, Kavyachol, that's Kalul Ba'atzmas or Ein Sof Kavyachol, which is the secret of Ana Emloch. So all of our midos, all of our spheros, all of it is rooted above, in that place of the Yachid, which is Pashat Betachlis Apshitus, but it's the secret of the Yechilis, like the potential towards movement within the hands prior to the application of movement. That all eventual iterations of movement are going to, by definition, be retroactively revealed to have been rooted in and dependent upon that original reservoir of pure possibility. Okay. like we discussed above in terms of the midah of chesed, and like we discussed above in terms of any of the elements of self. Ukeniz Gileel, as we explained earlier, b'mashal, with regards to the Yud Kochos HaKlulim, shebebechinas Yechida, bebechinas Hahiyuli, ve'atzmiut v'chulei, she'enan nivdalim min etzem klal, k'may koyach hatnua shekolol be'etzem hachai. Just as we discussed earlier, the midah of yichud, the midah of yecholas, prior to even the differentiation of the 10, so that we can then come to be surprised at the achdus of the 10. This is prior to any differentiation, and therefore it's far higher than any possible achdus, but it's reflective of the fact that there are 10 kochos that are kolul by way of potential within the singularity of the self in a hylic form that is essentially connected to the essence of self, that are not separated from one another because they're still contained within the essence, which is not something that can be separated whatsoever. It's like the potential of movement that is contained within the essential nature of the living creature prior to its expression, and it's like the emergence of vitality in its hylic form in the essence of the self prior to its distribution across the boundaries of the shifting and the changing of the self. This is the darga of Yachid. It's the chayis hahiyuli hakolul be'etzem hanefesh mamish, the hylic form of vitality in all of its inclusivity that is contained within the essence of the soul prior to its differentiation, as we explained. Ulamata mizeh, ובחינס אור אין סוף המאיר ומספשט, והכל עדיין בבחינס עצמוסה לפני הצמצום, וזהו הנקרא אחדות הפשוטה. Then, once we understand the secret of the Yecholas, once we understand the fact that there's a Metzias she'enim b'Metzias, and that once we're speaking about any revelation, by definition, that revelation has to be subject of being shaykh to all eventual iterations, because if it's something that's subject to revelation, then all future revelation is going to be able to be traced back to it. And anything we find in the lower elements of revelation have to be traced by way of a rishimu, by way of concealment of all concealment, has to be traced back to that place of yachid. So we're not even talking about a differentiation that is unified. We're talking about the unified space where differentiation begins to be an even possible thought in the secret of the yecholas. That's prior to the unity of all things. That's more like the tnua, the general shape of energy prior to its distribution, the general shape of vitality prior to any possibility of distribution. Then afterwards, we're still operating in a realm prior to the tzimtzum of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is the actualization of something. Then we enter into a lower level, which is going to be referred to as the unity that is revealed within the infinite light. Now that unity, which is still the infinite light, expresses itself by way of the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol. This is going to be where possibility of differentiation emerges, but that differentiation is never going to be differentiated, because that differentiation is going to be unified in all matters of unity. It's lower than Yachid, which is no separation and therefore no possibility of unity, but rather an all-inclusivity within the quintessential drop prior to expression. Then it reveals itself, and there's going to be the beginning of a further separation, but in that separation there's going to be a fundamental revelation of Achdus Apshuta. Sheyatakin Sham bebechinas hesklalis va'achdus be'eser sfiros. That in that place, even prior to the infinite light and the Tzimtzum, prior to the tzimtzum of the infinite light, we can now begin to speak of the unity between all of the different parts, the unity of all of the Eser Sfiros. The Gamheim Nikraim Eser Sfiros Belima. Those levels, by the level of Achdus, of Echad, where there begins to be the burgeoning potential of 10 possibilities that are now going to be revealed to be unified, those are not actualized yet. Those are still referred to as Eser Sfiros Belima. It's just that on the Darga of Yachid, it was a Darga of nothingness that was much higher than the Darga of nothingness that's revealed on the level of Echad. There are gradations to nothingness. There are gradations to what it means to not be able to grasp something. So first, the level of ungraspability was ungrasped even by itself. Then there's an ungraspability that grasps itself, which is the secret of, okay, there's 10 spheros here, and they're mu'uchad, but there's still a possibility of 10 spheros, because it's still lamala gamba b'chinas hachana lahashpa'a lamata begilo yadayin. Rak shemuchan letzei sahayuli b'davar prat kamei chafetz chesed hayuli hanizka la'el. So we said that there's 3 levels. There's the yachid, there's going to be the echad, which is the unity of all possibility, and this is still prior to the preparation being fully prepared to express any particularized form, which is going to be the 3rd level. That's going to be the kadmon. And then when it comes Shabala Inyan Haratzon V'Chafetz Chesed B'Shtal Shalis Takav V'Chulei Gam Shelo Yotza Adayin Begilui Gomer Gam Ba'atzmo Al Kol Panim Sham Yatakin B'Bechinas Achdus V'Hisklalis Rak Shenikra Achdus Apshuta B'Yotza Adayin B'Or Atzmus HaPashat B'Tachlis Kamei B'Bechinas Hischalkus Seichel V'Midos. In this place of Echad, we're speaking of a place after revelation to the degree that it's after the Yachid and there's a tenness that has begun to emerge, but it's prior to revelation in the sense that the Tzimtzum has not taken place yet. And so the words of the Mittler Rebbe are as follows. We're dealing with the revelation of the desire towards the Chafetz Chesed that now is relatable to the Seder Hashtalshalis of the Kav that's going to eventually come out, but it has not yet come out yet in any revealed way whatsoever, even to itself. Nevertheless, in that place, we can still begin to speak of the burgeoning of possibility being revealed, where we can now speak of the Achdus and the unity between all of that separation. But it's still referred to as simple Achdus because it's still prior to the revelation of anything other than the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's Pashat B'tachlis Apshitos, but it's still disoriented from that unity, and it's unified together. It's not the original unity of Yachid, it's the separate unity of Echad that is expressed in the Chafetz Chesed, which as a result of the original awakening of the desire, the Ritzon of Chachmas Lahitiv, Gam Terem Ba'u L'Klal Gilui, Klal V'Klal, so again, the Mittler Rebbe is introducing us to the two and the first two expressions of nothingness. There's the nothingness of the Yachid, which is prior to the differentiation of the 10 Sfiros, although it contains within itself, by way of Heilig potential, the possibility of the splintering up into those shapes of the 10 Sfiros, because by definition, if it's something that's subject to revelation, it is going to have that separation in a state of possibility within itself. And then we see what emerges is from pure possibility of the 10 spheros prior to the revelation is the Esser spheros that seem to be beginning to be revealed by way of differentiation. But in that place of lofty unity, still prior to the Tzimtzum of the Orient Sof, that differentiation is unified in its root, and that's the secret of Achdus. And then we come to the Gimel. The Darga of Gimel is Kadmon. Kasher mebechinas chafetz chesed zeh hu sha'ala kvar beratzon v'seicha v'chulei v'huchan b'chol hashir v'oisius Shir ba'atzmai echi ha'echus oifen ha'ashpa mamish l'chutz me'atzmuso al derech dugma mikoyach ha'tnua ha'muchan ech lahania v'koyach ha'chayus ha'muchan ech lahachios shemuchanim kvar b'shir v'oifen mugval kenizka le'el be'inyan ha'madrega ha'gimel she'benefesh u'lamala himenu. And then we come to the third level, which is after the original possibility of possibility, and then the actualization of that possibility. Then we come to the place of potential, where everything is at the ready to be revealed. It's not lacking its definition. It's not lacking in its orientation. It's not lacking in the directionality towards which it wants to go. Everything is prepared. Hakol muchan. All that is lacking is the actualization of it, which is the fourth level, which is the tzimtzum, at which point all of those stages of possibility then get revealed in a state of actuality. Hainu masha shir ba'atzmius or in sof shenikra tihiru ilah ba'oifen v'shir masha roitzim b'hishtalshalis b'poyel his galus dekav ad soif oilam ha'asiyah. That what's contained in this level of Kadmon, what's contained in this level of the third extension, where everything stands at the ready to be revealed, in spite of the fact that nothing is revealed yet, this is where all of the eventual shape of the Seder Hashtalshalis, which is engraved within the shiur and the estimation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rooted in the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all contained there by way of potential actualization prior to the actualization of potential, which is going to express itself in the Hisgalus of the Kav itself, which is the beginning of our Seder Hashtalshalis, down to the bottom of Olam HaAsiyah, which is what we refer to as Mashakasav Golif Gilufe B'Tihiru Ilah Keniska, that within the Tihiru Ilah, which is prior to the Tzimtzum itself, there are these two levels of Yachid. There's the three levels of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon. First and foremost, there's the Yachid prior to any differentiation, pure possibility, simply the reservoir of all eventual revelation, that only after the revelation will it retroactively be revealed that revelation was by definition and axiomatically speaking contained within the pure possibility of all revelation, because if it's revealed, it was rooted in that pure possibility. Then comes the emergence of that pure possibility into a stage of actualized possibility prior to actualization, which is where those 10 potential shifting orientations of the original unity, which are the 10 spheros, begin to take shape, but they're unified in their root there, and all matters of unity are revealed so that one thing can be revealed in 10 separate ways. And then the Kadmoin is the tzimtzum of the shir ba'atzmuso and the estimation of the shape in which this needs to be revealed, which takes into consideration all eventual revelation and gradations, which is the Seder Hashtalshalis, and that's the engraving of the letters within the Tihiru Ilah, that Kadsalik Biru Uslam Mivrei Alma, that when it came into the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create the world, there was the Butzina de Kardenusa, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Galif Gilufe B'Tihiru Ilah. Bereisha Menusa de Malka, in the original awakening of the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Galif Gilufe B'Tihiru Ilah, Butzina de Kardenusa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu engraved engravings within that profound place of unity, which represents the potential towards limitation that will eventually be revealed after the Tzimtzum. All of this is prior to the Tzimtzum. It's just the gradational levels of potential separation that existed prior to the Tzimtzum waiting to be revealed as a result of the Tzimtzum. That's what the third level is. Mashashir ba'atzmo or in soif shenikra tihir ilah ba'oifen v'shir masharitza b'shtalshlis b'poil esgalis t'kav or in soif ad soif olam ha'asiyah shazo mashakasav golif gilufe b'tihir ilah. There was an engraving. This is the shorish of the tzimtzum. This is the chachmas tima'ah. This is why chakak, which is the oisivs of chakika, is gematria yitzchak, because this is where the gevura comes from. V'hu nikra b'chinas kadmoin. That's kadmoin. Hainu masha kadam oifen aratzon lashpia terem shemashpia. This is the arrangement of what I would like to be mashpia prior to the actualization of hashpa'ah. This is the third and lowest level of the three-level gradations of the Yachid Echad, and then Kadmon is now at the ready to be revealed by way of Malchus. But it's still not adayin begiloi mamish. It's not revealed yet. V'hu adayin lefnei atzimtzum arishon shenikra makom pani v'chalal v'chulei kinizka le'el v'day lemevin. So we see the three dargin, the yud, kei, vav, kav yachol of the shem havai ha'atzmi koidem atzimtzum is going to be the yud, is going to be the yichud prior to any differentiation whatsoever, which is pure yicholis. Then there's going to be the hey, which is going to be the bina, so to speak, which is going to be the beginning of achdus, all of those differentiated particles within an absolute unity. And then the vav is going to be the kadmon, which is the orientation and the decision and the application of limitation of how it wants to be revealed, and then it's only going to be revealed by the fourth level. We didn't discuss the fourth level in the last year. In this year, we're going to be discussing the fourth level, which is how all of this potential towards actualization goes through these three stages of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon prior to the Tzimtzum, which is going to reveal possibility. And then after the Tzimtzum, all differentiation we now see is fundamentally rooted in these unfolding layers that took shape prior to the Tzimtzum itself. Madrega Hadalid, says the Mittler Rebbe, Hu Masha Acher HaTzimtzum HaNizka La'el Nishar Bebechinas HaReshimu V'Nimshach Mimenu HaKav Shehu Beklalis Bebechinas Tehiru Tata Bebechinas Makif Klali L'chol Hishtalshalis Tekav V'chule Shezehu Haba Bebechinas HaShpa'a L'matem and HaAtzmus Kamashal Chayas HaMispashet Begiloi L'Hachyos V'chule U'Bekoyach HaTnua Shemispashet L'Hania HaNifal Begiloi V'chule Shemeshtanim Memuhus Ruchani L'Muhus Hagshama Kenizka La'el. Now the Mittler Rebbe is explaining the lowest and most remarkable level. How do we get from those three prior stages of Yachid, Echad, Kadmon, how does it get across the finish line to reveal itself as something? Because everything is still tied up completely in the Or Ein Sof, Koidem, the Tzimtzum. So the fourth level is that after all of these Tzimtzumim, the Tzimtzum of Yachid, the Tzimtzum of Echad, and the Tzimtzum of Kadmon, how what remains is going to be an irreducible trace, a shape of that original infinitude. There's the Rishimu, that which is now engraved at the ready to be revealed. That's going to be there after the Tzimtzum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be Mitzamseim, that original infinite light. And what is going to remain afterwards is the irreducible trace of that infinite light, which is that Koyach HaGvul, that Shiur Ba'atzmo, that congealment process. Prior to congealment, the three stages of Yachid, Echad, Kadmon, and the slow and steady gradational shift from pure possibility into potential prior to actualization, now stands at the ready to, after the Tzimtzum, the radical Tzimtzum, to ensure that what remains afterwards in that space are those gradations of separation that reveal themselves and congeal themselves into the Rosham of the infinite light. That is where all light is going to be drawn out from, which is where the Kav comes from. So we see that Tzimtzum leaves a Rosham, and from the Rosham, the Kav is going to emerge, and that becomes the very beginning of the Seder Shtalshalos. So we see that the Kav itself, which is emergent from the Rosham, is nothing other than the byproduct of a Tzimtzum that was preceded by the lowest level of the Kadmon, which was the coalescence of all potential into a directed way in which it wanted to be revealed, which came from the level higher than it, which was the level of Achdus, which was all 10 forms of potential expression contained in a fundamental unity, which is rooted in the Yachid, which is rooted in the fact that even prior to the emergence of those 10 potential particular forms, there exists the quintessential drop of that Heilig matter, which is rooted in the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we see how everything that is taking place after the Tzimtzum and the Seder HaShtalshelis through the Kav is fundamentally rooted in all of those gradations of infinitude after the Kav, which is why they can be seen as two halves of one another. We said that everything that took place prior to the Tzimtzum is referred to as the Tehiru Ilah, as the ascendant place where shape begins to take shape prior to actualization. But then afterwards, after the Tzimtzum and the Roshim that's left over, which is the revelation and the congealment of the Yachid, Echad, and Kadmoin, then the Kav comes down from it and it creates the entirety of the Seder Shtalshelis, which is going to be referred to as the Tihiru Tata. So ultimately we see everything that preceded the Tzimtzum and everything that follows the Tzimtzum are really two sides of this singular thing called the Tihiru, which is this remarkable purified air and light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite presence, but it's folded into two separate parts. There's the Tihiru Ilah that precedes Tzimtzum and all of the gradations of Tzimtzum that take place prior to the actual Tzimtzum, and then there's the Tihiru Tata, which are all the gradations that take shape after the actual Tzimtzum. And that Tihiru Tata, that original light of the Roshim and the Kav, is going to serve as a makif klali l'chol hishtalshelis hakav. Now, everything that's going to come down afterwards, by way of differentiation, by way of limitation, by way of the actual Seder Hishtalshelis, is going to be surrounded by that first instantiation of measured light, which is the Roshim and the Kav and the Tihiru Tata, to ensure that all stages of eventual unfolding are going to be illuminated within the light of the highest levels themselves. This is exactly like the chayus, the vitality that is coming down from above to below, that is now beginning to express itself in differentiated forms. Or, like we said, it's the koyach hatnua, that potential form of movement, that now begins to extend itself downwards and express itself downwards in particular forms of movement, when a person decides to actually move their hand or move their finger. So that potential towards movement now expresses itself in a measured way, but it is fundamentally contained within the original unlimited expression of potential. And at this point is where the real miracle takes place, as the Mittler Rebbe says, Shemishtanim memuhus ruchani lemuhus hagshama hanizkaleo. At this stage, as a result of the Tzimtzum, and the slow and steady process of diminishment prior to Tzimtzum that took place prior to the Tzimtzum, which ensures that the Roshem is now congealed in a sense of somethingness. So now there's going to be this radical shift of Ein to Yesh, where from nothingness, somethingness is going to emerge. But somethingness is not standing in stark opposition to nothingness. Rather, somethingness is simply the congealment of nothingness, to the degree that if I look at somethingness on the fourth level, on the level of revelation, I can abstract it back up 3 levels and come back to the place of realizing that it's ultimately rooted in nothingness. Toila eretz al blima. And that the Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon are all infusing themselves within the Tzimtzum and the Rishimu and the Kav at every moment. Just like the Tzmicha Gashmi made Tzmicha Ruchani. Just as something practical can begin to grow as a result of the metaphysical koyach of growth that is rested within those physical forms. That it's the secret of the Pele Elyon, the secret of the transition and the porous borders between somethingness and nothingness, nothingness and somethingness, which is fundamentally rooted in the unique nature of Nishmas Yisrael to be masig, the secret of the Tzimtzum. Kachu erech ha'or sha'achar ha'tzimtzum l'gabe ha'or ha'atzmi shelifnei ha'tzimtzum. This is the relationship of the or that exists and is revealed after the Tzimtzum, which is the Rishimu and the Kav, which is the 4th level of revelation, where finitude begins to emerge from within the finite, the infinite. And all of the levels prior to the Tzimtzum are still in a state of absolute potential, even though they've come to the place of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon. The Mishum Zeh Hutzrech Lios Inyan HaTzimtzum Hazeh Rak B'Shvil Sheyachol Lios Ha'aras Ha'or Shebekav Sheba B'Shvil Makor LaAbiyah Kiyadua. The only reason for the Tzimtzum was because no matter how far down the Seder Hishtalshelis of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon go, they're still contained within that infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as a result, they are not going to be subject to revelation, because the infinite cannot be revealed. It's only by way of the Tzimtzum that infinite light undergoes this impossible condensation and condensement, where it still maintains itself, but nevertheless it undergoes a profound shift from its infinite nature, and it now expresses itself as a Rishimu of the infinite and a Kav of the infinite. Yes, it's still infinite, but it's a measured form of the infinite, which is the entire wonder and the Pele Elyon of the Seder Shtalshelis, how the infinite can reveal itself in a finite way without it being negated. So that is the story of those 3 stages prior to the Tzimtzum. In the end of the day, there will always be a tzimtzum that is necessary in order to ensure that the kav can take shape, and ultimately the purpose for the kav to take shape is the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, which is the dir b'tachtonim kiyadua. So we see how the entirety of the Seder Ishtalshalos from the beginning towards the end is ultimately rooted in the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal himself down here. Ach im kol zeh harei kol pratei ha'aser sfiros ta'atzilus bri yitzira nasiya hakol klulam meitchila ba'atzmis or in soif b'bechinas ha'hiyuli ba'atzmis. But nevertheless, what we see is that everything that is going to be revealed in the particularized forms of the 10 sfiros of the worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzira, Nasiya, all of them are going to be contained within the original thought of the Atzmus or Ein Sof Kavyachol prior to any Tzimtzum in the Heilig form of it, which is the level of Yachid. And then V'achar Kach Hayedei Tzimtzum Mishtanel Fi Oifen Mugval B'Hashba Klali the Kav B'Chinas Soivev Harizeh Kedugmas Chayes HaNefesh HaRuchani K'Shabal Lachiyos HaGuf Shekol B'Ruchnis Mikol Pratei Chayes HaGashmi Re'iyah V'Shmiyah Shebeguf HaGashmi. Then only afterwards does the Yachid go down into the Kadmon, and then go down into Echad, and then into the Kadmon, and then through the Tzimtzum it reveals itself as the Kav or Ein Sof that is now going to give the vitality to the entirety of the Seder Shtalshalos. It's just like that Chayas, that vitality of the self, which breaks free from the spiritual nature of it and expresses itself as that Chush HaKlali, as that general sense of consciousness, as that phenomenological awareness of the self, prior to any distinction or distribution of that selfhood into hearing or seeing or feeling or anything like that. So all differentiation is rooted in the place prior to differentiation. The Inyan HaTzimtzum, the Harishimu, and the matter of Tzimtzum and the Rishimu. So the Mittler Rebbe continues and he says, "The Inyan HaTzimtzum, the Harishima Yisbar B'Samach." We're going to go through this exact impossible transition where infinite becomes finite, but nevertheless that Gesher Tsar Ma'oid Ma'oid of the Tzimtzum being Kipshuto and not Kipshuto at the same time ensures safe passage between the infinite and the finite can return back to the infinite. That's going to be explained in the next parak. The Zehu Perish Klali Lamasha Kasuv, and the Tzemach Tzedek adds over here, everything we've just described over here, the slow and steady progression from the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, which is not something that's subject to our graspability, and then the emergence of the essence of the infinite light itself, which is the first instantiation of the possibility of somethingness, and then the three gradations in that place prior to the Tzimtzum, which obviously we're talking in the infinite realms, and we're talking only about the possibility of possibility prior to any actualized distinction, but rather reflective of the most fundamental unity imaginable, and any application of limitation in that place is tantamount to a kfira, to the degree that we're denying the fundamental unity of the infinite light prior to the creation of the world. Nevertheless, we understand that as a result of the fact that everything is rooted in the original expression, so we must be able to trace the Seder Ishtalshalos prior to the Tzimtzum as well. So there's the Dargin of Yachid, Echad, and Kadmon. Possibility prior to the beginning of actualized possibility, which is Yachid, possibility, which is Echad, and then the emergence and the preparation of possibility in a very measured way is going to be the secret of Kadmon, and then there's going to be the Tzimtzum. This is the general, and then it reveals itself as the Kav or Ein Sof, which then becomes to be the vitality and the Makif that gives shape to the entire Seder Shtalshalos. Zehu Perish Klali Lamaka Shekasav Baruch Sha'amar V'Haya Ha'olam. This is the general understanding of what we mean when we say Baruch Sha'amar V'Haya Ha'olam. Blessed is he who spoke and created the world, which the Arizal says is the Darga of Reish Lo Esyada in the Olam HaYetzira, which the Arizal says is Rosh Tevos B'Shov, meaning to say equanimity and equality between above and below, where prior to the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzum are going to be revealed to be one and the same. Perish Sha'amar Behe'elem B'Ritzone HaPashut Shebemalchus De'Ein Sof Be'Yoyse Adayin Kolul B'Chafetz Chesed Ha'atzmi Hanizka Le'el. That first and foremost, where did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to himself that he wanted to create the world? This is at the level of Yachid, prior to any distinction in that concealed place of the awakening of that will within the Malchus, the Ein Sof Kavyachol, that was contained within the Chafetz Chesed in its essential Heilig form. That's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to reveal. The emergence of the Koyach HaGvul is already taking shape in those lofty, lofty realms by way of nothingness itself. Achar kach v'haya, and then that v'haya is Baruch Sha'amar, and then it has to be revealed. V'haya, meaning to say the Gilui or HaMispashet l'davar prat l'hishtalshalios l'makor koloi lamis uperish v'haya olam, and then the v'haya is where that infinite potential descends down to become the source of vitality that's going to express itself within measured worlds. And then v'haya ha'olam hainu dafka min masha shiur ba'atzma b'koyach shu sharish masha metava achakach ha'olam haklali shenimshach min hakav v'chulei keniskal el b'day lemevin. And there's Baruch Sha'amar, blessed is he who spoke and it awoken within his will, which is the Yachid and the Echad, where it's prior to differentiation, and then the unity of the possibility of differentiation, and then it's V'haya Ha'olam. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals it on the level of Shir Ba'atzma, which is the level of Kadmon, and then it's going to be והיה העולם. היינו דווקא מן מה ששיר בעצמו בכוח שהוא שורש מה שמסהבה אחר כך, העולם הכללי שנמשך מן הקו וכולי כנ"ל ודי למבין. So the Baruch Sha'amar is the koyach of the Yachid and the Echad, and the Vahaya Ha'olam is the Kadmon that is then going to be revealed within the Kav or in Sof itself, which is going to animate the entirety of the Seder Hashtalshalis. And then Baruch Hu is a language of Nistar, Hu Hainu Bechinas Kadmoina Shal Olam, meaning to say that the revelation in this world is ultimately the secret of who. It's coming from that place of concealment prior to the Tzimtzum. All potential emergence is rooted in the potential estimation of emergence prior to the Tzimtzum. That from that place of Shir Ba'atzmo, it contains all possibility within it. It's the Reshitz that's Magid the Acharis. It's from the beginningness of the Kav down to the end of the Kav. So we have the Baruch Hu, that all emergence is rooted in that place prior to the Tzimtzum. And all emergence of the world and Yimei Kedem is rooted in that place of Koidem Shenivra Ha'olam, which is the secret of Yimei Kedem, which is days prior to days. Koidem Lamasha Nimshach B'Kav. It's the possibility of emergence on the level of Kadmoin, on the level of everything is prepared and ready to be revealed, but it's still prior to the Tzimtzum. And then as a result of the Tzimtzum, the Rishimu, the Hamshachas HaKav, then it's revealed in the Koyach HaGvul, Bebilti Gvul, V'huma shekodam be'atzmoi bekoyach ma she'asad liyos bepoyel v'chulei v'day l'meben. So Baruch Sha'amar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu awakens within his infinite light the fact that there is going to be the emergence of the Yachid and the Echad, the potential of possibility and the beginning process of the actualization of that possibility prior to differentiation. Then there's going to be the level of Kadmoin, which is the secret of V'haya Ha'olam, where all preparation is rooted and all eventual revelation is going to be revealed. And then that undergoes a Tzimtzum, and then there's a Rishimu, and then there's the Kav. And Baruch Hu is the recognition that everything that exists after the Tzimtzum is still going to be traced back to that Kadmon, to the Yemei Kedem, to that place of Atik Yomin that was Koidem the Tzimtzum. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Shir ba'atzmo, shekadem ba'atzmo b'koyach ma shelo ased liyos b'poel. That everything was prepared in a state of potential prior to the actualization of the Tzimtzum. Ma shekasav Baruch oimer v'oiseh, and then we go on further, and it's Baruch oimer v'oiseh v'chulei. Hanu ma shenimshach b'kav b'poel mamish v'oiseh b'reishis hu kol shir kumas ak v'chulei. Then Baruch oimer v'oiseh is Baruch Hu. We realize that everything is coming from the kadmoina shel olam, from prior to the Tzimtzum, and then we extend it and we schlep that awareness down into the oimer v'oiseh, into all of the particularized particulars of the Ak and Abiyah and all of the Seder Hashtalshalis, which is all of the Riboy Pratim that are ultimately going to take place. And this is why Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Olam is the highest level of revealing the unity between before the Seder Hashtalshalis and after the Seder Hashtalshalis, as they're both fundamentally unified in the secret of Shavisi Hashem Negdi Tamid. The Goyzru Makayim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Goyzru Makayim, Betchila, Hu B'B'chinas Kav Hamida, which is the B'tzina de Kardenusa, and the decision as to how to differentiate and measure all of the particularized expressions that take shape within the worlds. That takes place prior to the Adam Kadmon itself, which is the secret of the Tzimtzum of the Rishimu, Shenimshach Mimenu Akav, Ki Yaduo, Kamoisha Kosev, Kamoisha Yispar, Be'ezras Hashem, B'Samech. So what the Mittler Rebbe is giving us is just a profound and very clear summary of what we're up to until now, that we have to hold cup, that any time we find ourselves in the Seder Hashtalshalis, on any level of measurement, which is the entirety of existence, we have to bring it all the way back to the place prior to the possibility of separation and prior to the possibility of differentiation. This is the secret of the unity between before and after the Tzimtzum, that the infinite realms prior to the Tzimtzum, prior to the creation of the world, and the realms of finitude after the creation of the world, they're all the same. Ani Hashem lo shinisi, I have not changed whatsoever. Ani Rishon va'ani Achron umi baladai ein Elokim. So the Mittler Rebbe said, how? We see differentiation down here. So Memela, we have to be able to track all differentiation back up to the place of the possibility of differentiation. And from that possibility of differentiation, prior to any actualization of differentiation, we slowly but surely see how the gradational descent and the tzimtzumim that took place prior to the tzimtzumim were necessary to reveal to us the tzimtzum that we're aware of, which is that secret kind of liminal space of the Gesher Tzar Ma'od Ma'od, which on the one hand conceals the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu so that it can be revealed, but on the other hand also reveals the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu beneath the Tzimtzum line so that it can express itself into the realms of concealment. And that's the place that we're going to come and see the deepest unity. When we're aware that everything that's taking place down here is fundamentally rooted in that which is taking shape above in the most pristine realms of unity. And that's Baruch Sha'amar V'haya Ha'olam Baruch Hu, Baruch Omer V'oisa, that Baruch Sha'amar B'haya Olam is HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'chvodo V'atzmo Kaviyachol, in the infinite light of himself, that develops the possibility of finding that potential and possibility of the Yechelis, like the Tznua that is Kolul B'toich Habal Chai Koidem His Pashtusa Lamata, or the Chayis that is contained within the Nefesh prior to its extension downwards into the variated space of sensual experience. It exists by way of the possibility of existence, but it's prior to any distinction whatsoever. And even though it's impossible to come upon what it means that there's the Yechelis of differentiation prior to actualized differentiation on the level of Yachid, what the Rebbe quoted in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek is that when Moshe Rabbeinu says that it's time to leave Mitzrayim, so there's the secret of Bilti Yecholis Hashem, that the question is Hashem not able to do this? Mitzrayim is going to ask, is Hashem not able to do this? Meaning to say this wondrous principle of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's Yecholis, which is the possibility of somehow, some way, allowing there to be the beginning of differentiation on a level of pure potential of Metzias She'ena b'Metzias that has not yet even begun to take shape, and then it takes shape in a further way on the level of Echad, and then on Kadmon, it shows us how everything is contained in the loftiest levels. And then we see Baruch Hu, that anytime we see that there's going to be Tzimtzumim and any revelation, we have the ability to say, it's who? It's you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's you. You're revealing yourself everywhere in all of these gradational flows. And it's our job through Baruch Sha'amar to see how it applies in all of the realms of separation. Each and every person is an Ak and an Abiyah. Each of us is a Seder Ashtalshalis. Each of us encounters Tzimtzumim Rabim and Gvulim and Shiurim and the Kav Hamida and the B'tzin, the Kardanusa, and all of the Hastaros that feel that there's some muster from the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But by way of extrapolating these very quick steps in the abstraction of thought and being mispoining a little bit on Elikus, we come in 5 steps to bring ourselves back to that place of simplicity, back to that place of goodness, back to that place of connecting ourselves to the Kav Yachol, to that place of hope, which serves as the only instrument that can bring us from beneath the Seder Shtalshalis to above the Seder Shtalshalis, Be'ezras Hashem. And we're going to see more about the Tzimtzum and the Rishimu in the next year, in the next parak, Be'ezras Hashem.